Okay, I'm Andy with Kaizen Speed in Kennewick, Washington, and today we're going to show everybody out there pretty much all the components and parts and what it takes to put a Dogbox together for a B series, and some things that you need to look for while assembling so that the thing stays alive. Our setup is the Liberty billet bell housing. We go with this. A lot of guys are breaking factory cases. If you have this case, you either know someone that's broken the factory case or you have broken it yourself. Where the bearings ride and with the straight cut gears, the shafts and diff want to spread apart from each other so much that a factory case just can't hold it together. You'll get cracks on the inside where the bearings have pulled apart. As of right now, this seems to be the best solution. The brace comes with the PPG Gear Set. It's intended it comes with it because most people do not have the Liberty bell housing. So what this is to keep the lower bearings together and to try to combat the factory cases from splitting apart. Once you have the billet case, it's not a biggest problem. Everybody that has the PPG is running this one because of the bearing size. The set comes with specific bearings to run this, so obviously unless you're going to buy your own bearings that work with the factory OD and the new ID, you're pretty much going to run this. Whether it's needed with the billet, we don't know, but it's definitely, added security. One thing you can see with this one is we've cut a lot of it off. It used to shroud pretty much 260 to 270 degrees of the pinion gear itself. It used to sit just about like that, and this wall came almost all the way to the teeth on both sides. Okay, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about the case. This is a Liberty billet bell housing. It's cut from a single piece of billet. It's about as stout as you can get. We had to do some modifications to it. The first modification that was a must, and I don't know if it was a result of the batch that we got or because we're running a H2B, and that might have something to do with it. On putting the transmission on the engine, our flywheel actually touched the bell housing right here, so it had to take it back out and grind. I don't know of anyone else with this bell housing having that problem. Now on the inside of the case, we've made a few modifications. None were really necessary for fit. Everything kind of goes in the case how it should. One change we made is there's a webbing right here that kind of shrouds the oil inlet to the countershaft. On a factory case, it comes all the way over, leaves a pretty small window for oil to get in. Oil gets in here just from dripping, falling off stuff, sling from the diff. The factory hole is pretty big, a lot bigger than the billet one. So I cut this off. I also trimmed this back so that now it's a lot easier for oil to get in there. The original hole in the Liberty case is about 3/16, maybe a little smaller, and a small oil orifice to feed the bearing and the inside of the shaft that feeds all the roller bearings. This was enlarged to promote more oiling, and this was enlarged to promote more oiling. Whether it's a necessity, I have no idea, but you can never have too much oil. It's kind of my idea behind it, and it kind of makes me feel better. The hole gets extremely close to the outside of the case. So if you do go ahead and do this modification, keep in mind to drill offset. Don't follow the old path. You're going to want to keep the hole to the diff side of the old passageway, just to kind of make sure that you don't put a hole through the inside of your case. It does get pretty thin down here at the bottom. I'm not too worried about anything cracking. Like I said, the billet case and the lower cuff pretty much combats any kind of movement that we've seen so far. The first setup, we had the diff a little bit lower. Normally when you set a diff up, there is no shim on the bottom. It's only on the clutch, or it's only on the transmission housing, not the bell housing. The diff sits all the way down. You shim your end play with a shim on the top. When we did that, I had to remove a little bit of material. The ring gear bolts were actually touching on a few spots. Now that I've gone through and done a few more clearances and checked things, I'm actually shimming the diff up. It rides a lot nicer on the pinion gear, more centered. I noticed the wear pattern on the pinion gear that it was riding pretty low. The ring gear is smaller than the pinion gear. So ideally what you want to happen is you want a little bit of meat exposed on the bottom and on the top, and the ring gear rides right in the middle. Ideally. Obviously that's going to be determined on how much clearance you have, what you can play with. There's a big variance, not big, but there is a variance in transmission housings. Honda makes a lot of different shims for the top of the main shaft. It kind of gives you an idea that their tolerances are not super tight, which is not typical of Honda, but they know that you can be off a little here and there. So, with that being said, we have two top housings. This is the one that we run when it's all assembled. This is our window case. It has two windows, so you can see first and second gear and the shifter assembly, and a big window on this side to see third and fourth gear in engagement, and more of the shift assembly and also the shift forks. You leave the portion that holds the detent balls so that you can kind of see where the detent wants to be when you're fully engaged in a gear. Because they have a variance between each other, you need to set up your main shaft in play with the case that you're going to run. Okay, so the first thing obviously is assembly. I didn't mention earlier, but you do have to clearance the billet case for PPG's lower brace to fit. It goes down. I don't know if it's normal, but ours bottoms out on this side. It doesn't go down any lower. Doesn't seem to be an issue. I think that's just how it is. Normally, the first thing you're going to do for setup is take just the input shaft all by itself, no shims, anything. Put it in the case with the top, and bolt the top down with the top that you're going to be running, not the window case, and roll it over and check your shaft in and out play. When the gears are in here, one thing to notice is that when this is all the way down, you have X amount of travel before the brace actually touches fourth gear. The countershaft, when it's in the case, is going to go up a little bit depending on your case and sit inside the snap ring. So the countershaft will actually ride higher than this. It's something to keep in mind, that if you're going to shim the main shaft up, to never exceed the amount that the countershaft goes.